This episode of Inside the Goblin Universe brought to you by SeatsLink.com, the complete ticket experience. Use promo code GOBLINS with your purchase. SeatsLink.com.
Hi everybody, this is Santariga from the Bronxville Paranormal Society, and you're listening to Inside the Goblin Universe with your hosts, Ron Murphy and Bryan Bowden.
Hello again, Goblins, and welcome to another edition of Inside the Goblin Universe. I am one of your hosts. My name is Ronald Murphy.
And I'm Bryan Bowden.
Bryan, we've got a special show tonight, my friend. This is somebody that you've known for a while, and you've also done investigations with him. So without further ado, my friend, why don't you introduce our guest?
Well, I'm his number two for a reason, but he is the founder of the Bronxville Paranormal Society, and he is Al Santariga. Al, welcome to Inside the Goblin Universe, finally.
Thank you for having me, gentlemen. It's my pleasure to be here.
It's our pleasure having you, my friend.
Yeah, you're family. Give me a break. Let's dispense with the formalities. You're part of the crew, and the whole group. Not the goop, but that'll be coming up soon. Al called me the other day, and he had an experience while driving home. And ultimately, this revolves around a place that we investigated, and that's Nuclear Lake. Mm-hmm. So let's start talking about Nuclear Lake, because I got to tell you, to this day it still blows my mind. So
yeah, for those people that don't know about it, like me here in Western Pennsylvania, why don't you give us a little bit of background about the area, what it looks like, and why it has such a name?
Bryan, you want to handle this?
No.
You did a.
You're welcome.
You did the research on it.
Welcome to the house. Okay, I'll start it off. So
let me first ask: is it an actual lake?
Oh
yes.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's a what's about circumference about 2 miles?
14 acres. I think it's 14 acres.
So it's a pretty sizable piece of property then.
Yeah.
No, it's definitely a sizable piece of property. I mean, it's a vast wilderness that's out there. Basically,
is it natural, man-made, guys?
Natural lake.
Excellent,
Yeah,
excellent.
Yeah.
Now, for the cliffhanger, why is it called Nuclear Lake?
Well, back in the 70s,
1972.
Yep. There's a company called United Nuclear Corporation, got special permission by the United States government, specifically the military, to work with weapons grade radioactive material. And the rumor was that they were working on an engine, and I'm putting that in air quotes because the only engine I can think of is something that is what would be current day type of technology. So we've talked in the past with many guests that we were about 150 years ahead of everybody else, but they started working on it, and they were mining it up there. Basically, there was an accident, and it leaked a tremendous amount of radiation. There was a fire, an accident. The lake got compromised. The government said they cleaned it up eventually, put like $3 to $5 million into cleaning it up. And you know how they clean up things, like they do, take care of your health care or the people in Louisiana during hurricanes. So it's still, in my opinion, I think in Al's opinion, a hotbed. But I was introduced to Nuclear Lake because Al has been there for many, many times. So I'm going to defer to Al now to get into the strange and bizarre.
Yeah, no, the place has a long history. The Native Americans thought it was a sacred area. I know that the U.S. Mining Corps, they actually mine uranium out of the mountains at the lake, and they had a refinery on the lake, and then the refinery blew up, everything spilled into the water. But it's considered a federal park. It's not on, there's no signs on the parkway for it. There's no parking lot for it. The Appalachian Trail runs through it, and it's a place of high strangeness. People have seen UFOs over the lake, siphoning water out of the lake. They've seen light anomalies go in and out of the lake. The Native Americans they thought it was a sacred site. A lot of high strangeness there, all in all. So it's just, I heard a couple of neighbors talking about Bigfoot sighting there a long time ago. And of course, that once I heard that, I decided to go. I decided to go before I created the Bronxville Paranormal Society. I would go out with a group of friends, and we went out and we investigated. And the very first time we went out and investigated, we were hiking up the mining road. It's like a mile hike in, and we got about 3/4 of the way up to the lake, and we found a deer, a 150-pound, 175-pound buck, stuffed about 60, 70 feet up in a tree, wedged up there. Now, I don't know.
Yep.
I don't know what else can carry a buck that big up a tree. I don't think a mountain lion could carry something that heavy up that high. And if you've seen this tree, Ron, it's like a fireman's pole. There are no branches. It goes straight up until it forks. So whatever went straight up that tree and put it there. And then as we were walking around the lake on our very first investigation, we started finding a lot of these little cairns up on these cliffs and these ledges, and freaked me out the first time I seen it, because I thought like Blair Witch or something like that, devil worshippers. But then Bryan was telling me about how the cairns, the Native Americans made them as well, but I don't think the Native Americans made these. I found out later in my research that actually the Sasquatches make them as well. Which is news to me.
These kind of stone structures, whenever you think of a cairn like that, you immediately have this evocative image of Ireland and Scotland and the British Isles, where these kind of stone structures are quite common. People used to call them fairy mounds before they realized they were actually ancient tumuluses, from right around the time of the Mesolithic period, so ancient stone burial chambers. But it's interesting whenever people do find these, and they find them in Pennsylvania every now and then as well too. And that is that's one of my true interests in these areas that seem to be outside of our historical understanding. So you can see them there. They're known. They're tourist attractions. I mean, what actually is known about these cairns?
I don't know. I don't know much about them. There's nothing written about them up here. I don't believe that the Native Americans in this area, to my knowledge, and I could be wrong about this, the Iroquois and the Mohegans and the made cairns, stone cairns. I'm not really sure. I don't think they did. They may have had like totem poles and stuff like that, but I don't know if they did rock work, structures like that. But anyway, I heard my neighbors, who's a local guy, I'm talking to a couple of his buddies, say one night that a couple of his friends were going coon hunting at Nuclear Lake, and they're walking up the lake with their dogs, and they got these big, coon dogs, and they got off the Appalachian Trail where it comes to the lake, and it's like a little campsite there, and they started getting rocks thrown at them. They didn't know what was going on, so one of the guys said, they thought it was, high school kids messing around, and they said, if you don't stop throwing rocks, we're going to let the dogs loose. Well, the rocks kept coming, so they let the dogs loose. The dogs got about 50 feet and turned around and ran past them with their tails between the legs and ran all the way back to the trucks and hid underneath the trucks. So these guys didn't know what was going on. So,
Wow. That's incredible. Yeah, the one things that Bryan and I like to talk about and we like to investigate is the idea of this lineage of certain areas. So whenever you talk about the Native Americans finding this place sacred and having things happening even to this very day, what I like to look for is some sort of signs that this has been known to be an area of a liminal region, something beyond our understanding, something set aside. And it could be that these cairns that are witnessed there could be almost signposts to say this is one of those spots where, for lack of a better word, portals are known to open. Especially this is a place of radiation, where people are mining things, and you talk about UFOs coming to this area. It seems like these areas of high strangeness might be naturally occurring spots on the earth where, other dimensions, other realities can bleed in and out. Could this be one of those areas?
Oh, absolutely. The team psychic, our team psychic says this place, she's never felt energy like this place. She said the energy that comes out of this place whenever we go there, and we call her when we get there to get a reading. And she's just like, I recently I wanted to go on Friday the 13th. I wanted to go, but everybody was working, so nobody could. So we went on the 14th. But she said to me, for some reason, the month of October, the energy at this place just goes through the roof. Now, we've been there many times, and last time I went with this guy, Danny, and as a matter of, just to backpedal a little bit, we were taking this woman, Heidi, from England to show her one of our spots, and I came across a spot that had been burnt out that I could never get into. It was just too much overgrowth. And something just told me to go into this burnt out area. So when I went into this burnt out area and I'm looking up this hill, again, I see it looks like a megalithic stone with a cairn on it. So I asked my cameraman, Bill, I said, zoom in on that rock up there. And when he zoomed in, it turned out to be more than just a cairn. It turned out to be this megalithic stone with hundreds and hundreds of stones on it. So what we did was I went charging up the hill. When I got to the top of this hill, turned out to be a high plateau. And when we got up there, we found not just one megalithic stone, but many set up in a circle area. It's like a perfect circle. And each one of these megalithic stones had hundreds and hundreds of stones on top of them, little stones. And then we found the archways and the breaks and the bends and the twists and the X's and trees pulled down and put underneath, 30-foot logs that are a foot thick. Two people couldn't pull these little trees out of there if they tried or move those logs. We found so much evidence. There were trees that were twisted from the roots to the tips. There were a twist going right up the middle, split right up the middle, but still alive. It was
That's
crazy.
Incredible.
We
found so much stuff.
To interject with to give you the description of these trees, if I see a tree like that, I'm thinking more of a rainforest, southernish kind of a landscape, because there are more rubber trees and what have you. Not the northeastern type of tree. This thing, whatever was playing with this thing, had to be a monster-sized individual. Because you just can't do that with the normal trees in the Northeast. No,
and you could, and these things, you could see that these things. There were breaks and twists. Don't get me wrong, that was obvious. But the fine tree, I have never seen in all the years of investigating. I've never seen trees that were twisted from the bottom to the tippity top, and there was a twist going through the whole. Unless they're just those vine-looking trees that look like a vine that bend. You know what I mean? But these things were like maple trees, but young saplings,
Right. It takes an incredible amount of energy to be able to do that. I mean, it's so something had to grip it and basically take one hand, twist it one way, and the other hand twist it the other way. Is the way
its way all the way up,
the whole way up,
from the root to the tip. And I'm not talking about little trees. I'm talking about trees that are 7-9 feet tall. You know what I mean? So they're not little things. It's not like a 3-foot tree that's just a sapling. It's just amazing. And so I knew the minute I found that location, I knew the next time we went back to do a night-day investigation, that was going to be base camp. And that leads up to the night I did it with Danny. Again, Bryan, you were going to say something?
Well, you just got to understand something. That there's some major league radiation that going on there. And we all know that when you have a radioactive area, and you could use Chernobyl as an example, the trees seem, and all the wildlife, just I guess they sort of adapt to it, but they create these monsters in the area. So these trees are really heavily fortified, not by nature mostly, but I think by radiation. So it does play a big role.
Well, I will say this: the tree canopy there is very, very thick, and when you're underneath that tree canopy, it could be 2:00 in the afternoon, and it's dark underneath it because there's a lot of foliage for sure in that area.
Wow. So this high strangeness in this area, people are still reporting seeing Bigfoot-type creatures in this area even today, correct?
Absolutely. I had an
That's-
encounter not a couple of weeks ago, but that's a story for another day.
Actually, yeah, I want to talk about that because Bryan did touch on it a little bit, and I'm glad that we have you on tonight where we can get this firsthand.
Well, one of the things and we're going to let Al continue for a little bit if it's all right, because there's more to this when he was there with Danny, because you're going to get that sighting that you want. So
Okay.
I'm going to defer back to Al, because Al, you should explain what took place and how it took place, and then of course I'll interject when I was able to step into the program from miles away. But so when you were there with Danny, you made that your base camp for the most part, right?
Yes, we set up base camp there, and what I did was I threw down a perimeter of glow sticks about 10 feet around us, so we'd have some ambient light, because I don't like to make fires in the woods. I don't want to burn the woods down. I put a couple of glow sticks in between us so we could see each other. Danny had the night vision goggles on, and I was using the parabolic mic, and we sat down, and I had the thermal imager going and the IR camera going. I had a digital voice recorder behind me on one of the megalithic stones going all night long. And it was Danny's first time out doing any kind of squatching. And he was sitting there, and I broke out a little tom-tom and some flute and a flute, and Danny played the flute, and I played the tom-tom. We did a little like a Native American ceremony to try to bring them in. And I kind of had a feeling that if they were going to come in, they were going to come in from the high ridge line to our west. It just, for some reason, it just seemed like the perfect spot to overlook the sacred area. It looked down upon us. It looks down upon everything. It's so high. And, during the course of the night, after we did our little ceremony, I would film, and I wasn't really getting much of anything. A couple of anomalies on the thermal imager, and Danny pulls up the night vision goggles at one point, and this is the first time he's ever using them. And he's got them wrapped around his neck. He's not giving them up that night, and he pulls them up, and then all of a sudden he sees, and my night vision goggles have two settings. They have the green screen setting, and they have the inverted setting, the black and white screen. And he pulls them up, and he sees a Sasquatch standing next to a tree about 50 feet away from us. And he turns to me, and he says, "Al, I think we have company." And I'm like, "Okay, where?" And he says, 50 feet, to your 9 o'clock. So I said, okay. So I go over and I take the IR camera, and I'm zooming. And I believe that they can see the IR light. I really do.
Yep.
There's no doubt in my mind they can. And I'm filming with the IR camera, and I don't see anything. And I'm saying, "Which tree?" And he says, "The big tree in the back." He was standing to the right of it, just standing there looking at me. So I said, okay. So I'm filming. I zoom in. I don't get anything. I aim the thermal imager at it. Again, I don't get anything on the thermal imager. So he's a little nervous because he's never seen one before. And I told him, I said, "Dan, don't worry. We've been coming here a long time. And these Sasquatches that we deal with here are very patient of us. We've never been attacked or
Extremely patient.
Yeah, in any way, shape, or form. We've never been attacked. So we're sitting there. A few minutes later, I break out a Tibetan singing bowl. And I do this Tibetan singing bowl, and I fill the woods up with the frequency and the vibration. And again, you could feel the energy in the woods change after that chakra from the Tibetan singing bowl. And Dan pulls the goggles up again, 15 minutes later. And now the creature is about 25 feet away, and he's on the other side of a different tree, but he's rocking back and forth, to the right and to the left. And Dan's starting to freak out. And it's like, "Al, this thing is getting closer. Maybe we should get the hell out of here." And I'm like, no, we're good. Don't worry. This is a sacred site. Nothing's going to happen. Nothing's going to happen to us here. I'm very confident in that. And he's like, okay. And I'm taking pictures and this, that, and the other thing. I'm taking pictures at night. Again, a few minutes go by, another maybe 10 minutes go by, and he pulls the goggles up again. And this time the creature's about 15 feet away from us. It must have crawled over to us, because now it's hunched down in a squatting position by a bush, making itself look small, like a bush. And Dan's really freaking out at this point. He's like, "Dude, we got to go. This thing is right here." And I'm like, no, we're not going to leave. We're just going to hang out. We're gonna, let it. I said, I believe it's just a scout that came down off of the ridge line. He heard the music, the Indian ceremony music. They came in to check us out. They want to know what we're doing here. Just don't panic. But again, every single time I would grab that IR camera and point it in its direction. I never seen anything. I don't know if when I pointed it at that bush where it was sitting, if it had gone down on its belly and did like an army crawl and crawled away, because I couldn't find it. And then I looked for it on the thermal imager. I said, okay, I can't see you on the IR camera. I'll see you on the thermal imager, because now he's not hiding behind a big tree. It's just a bush. And I hit it with the thermal imager, and again, nothing there. So we stood there for a little while, and then we heard a rock knock, and then we heard a tree knock, and then we heard like an owl hoot, but I don't believe it was an actual howl. Just it was a little funky. And then we heard a coyote. Again, it was strange because it was like just one coyote. Usually when one goes off, they all go off. And Dan's getting nervous. And around this time, Bryan calls, and you tell us what you said, Bryan.
Well, I wasn't able to make it. I really wanted to go, and I'm sitting in my house after I had to do my thing, family-wise. And so I decided to do a little remote viewing of the situation. So I've never seen this here. Actually, I've been to Nuclear Lake a bunch of times, but never been to this specific spot. But I was able to start seeing. I was telling him, you've got things, creatures that are around your perimeter. They're checking you out from the perimeter, and there's a bunch of them there, and they're walking back and forth. And I said, eventually, you're going to see some kind of blue light. And I use the term wisp, and Ron knows about wisps. But it was like a wisp. And I just told him to be careful. I was getting a little bit of a tension vibe there, but that's the most I can see. I couldn't see figures, but you can kind of when you can see something darker within a dark space, it's just a little bit hair dark. Something's there. So that's what I was telling to Al at this point. And I wasn't really sure about Danny at this. I didn't see how nervous he was, but being the first time there, I was concerned that he may give off a little bit of a vibe. But Danny's a good guy, and even though he was nervous, things started playing out really well for them.
You also said something about a white light as well. You said you seen a white light and a blue flash or something to that effect.
Yeah, it's really weird. I get it. Like, it looks like fireflies, but they're not fireflies. They're like little dots. And you'd see little dots here and there. And the only thing you think of is that these were like fairy creatures or wisps, or so I was there was something very spiritual about it.
That's right. I've experienced something like that as well too, and it's hard to describe. The closest analogy comes to mind is a firefly, but it's different, isn't it? It's almost as if it is an LED light.
Yes,
a living, breathing, intelligent LED light out in the woods. And
the way I see it is that it's coming on and off. There's no rhyme or reason at this point, because, mind you, I'm a good hour away from where he is. Easy 60 miles away. And so I'm seeing this, I'm using whatever ability I have to get there remote viewing. It's always good, though. Al confirmed it, and his photos confirmed it. But I was just concerned because I didn't know how many people were going there. I just wanted to make sure he was all right. And when he goes out, not that I'm a mother hen, but we always look out for each other when we do investigations. So that was my job, and even though I'm 60 miles away, I was looking out for him. I'm trying to just like, it's very interesting. Ron, you may get a kick out of this, but Al and I will be discussing something on a sidebar, another investigation, or like, hey, let's go do this, let's go do that. And the next thing you know, like, we set plans to do something, we get a call from our psychic, like, what are you guys doing? So there's something about us three as being together that it's almost a destiny thing. We were meant to be together. There's a synchronicity there, just like I think, all three of us first met, Ron, Al, and I, we all met people on another interview, a roundtable interview. So it seems to be that when you're destined to be with people and you're in this field, you're with those people.
Yeah, that's absolutely the case. I think it does come down to vibrations. I truly do. I never thought about that way originally, but the idea of synchronization, some things aren't just coincidence. Something is throwing us together, and I think that that's why we're here tonight together, and that's why I also think that we are talking about what we are talking about tonight, because we're seeing this link between, European, folklore and archaeology in regards to the cairns, and experiences that we've had concerning these little light creatures, whatever, over different times and spaces. So I think that there's a reason why we're talking about this stuff.
Yes.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what. When we originally found that site, what I call the sacred site, we got Dr. Rita Louise on the line, and we FaceTimed her, and we said, we showed her what we were seeing, and she looked around and she said, "Where are you guys, in the UK?" And we're like, "No, we're in New York." She goes, "Well, it looks like a Druid sacred site." That's what she said to us.
Now, see, and I'm glad that you brought that up, because that's one of the points that I wanted to make. And I know that we're kind of jumping all back and forth here, but I think whenever the listeners, finally listen in, it's going to make some sense. So we are talking about a site that doesn't make any logical sense in relation to Native American Indian populations. This is something that past cultures in Europe would have done, speaking of the Druids and speaking of these kind of shamanic religions that are lost in the vast recesses of time. It seems as if this particular spot that you're talking about is a continuation or a synchronization with these other sites from around the world. We talk about ley lines on the show a lot as well, too.
Yep.
And in Europe, these cairns and these areas of high energies are part of a ley line system. And isn't it also curious that the Appalachian Trail, which links parts of the United States together, is in that very area? So is the idea of ley lines? We don't talk about that much in America, but is that part of who we are as well too, in this paranormal grid pattern that the Earth seems to have?
I think so. I absolutely think so.
Part of this stuff, when we do our research, before we go into an investigation, we do research. When we're out of the investigation, we're doing research, of course. I mean, we're always learning. One of the things that did come across, I think, Al, you mentioned it as well, and I don't know if Bill, when we went out together, but there may be ley lines there. That's one of the first things both of us kind of asked. Like, you think there's a ley line? And if you ask a couple of the local tribesmen there, they'll tell you yes, but it's not a definitive yes. Just because someone says something doesn't mean it's true. So we're still trying to research whether there are ley lines there, but it does fall in an area that does have ley lines near it. So I mean, where they're crisscrossing and why they crisscross, it's still to be determined.
Yeah, and another strange thing about, I know we are jumping all over it, but another strange thing about Nuclear Lake, it has these stone walls that run through it. And, originally people say, oh, they're dividing lines, they're markers, they're roads, or this, that, and the other thing. But these stone walls are, 3 feet, 4 feet high, and they run for hundreds of miles. But they run parallel to one another. Why would you build 2 stone walls with 10 feet of space or 20 feet of space in between them if you're just using it as a marker, a boundary marker? Doesn't make any sense. It's just, and they're all over the woods. They're just like all over this property.
I mean, and you gotta go back to when people would have been putting up these stone walls. They didn't have the heavy equipment to do it. This is a major league undertaking. It's not like the farmer who they use stones back in Europe to mark their property, the hectares or whatever it is. There's a purpose for this, and what it is, we're still trying to determine, because, like Al said, it isn't just this is my property, you stay off it. It's just it has too much of a ceremonial or ritualistic type of feel to it. But we can't. I don't think I haven't been able to pinpoint where this is coming from. I've had calls in for our group BPS to a couple of tribes in the area, and they don't really want to talk about it. And I don't know if that's because it's a sacred thing and they want to keep you out, or it's they don't know. They don't want to sound ridiculous.
Yeah, no, I mean, I know I've stepped in between those two walls, and I sat there, and it's to me, just me personally, the energy in between those two walls seems like it's a lot higher than it is on either side of that wall. I don't know why that is, but it just seems like some kind of vortex or energy road. You know what I mean? I don't know.
Yeah.
Right. So before people could name it, they could feel it, and this is their way of keeping a boundary. It seems to me, because I've been researching this stuff for the better part of 2 decades, and it does seem to be. I mean, over in Europe, things like Stonehenge, before you actually get to the monument itself, you have this built up earthen wall as a demarcation point, say, you better not go any further because you're going to come up to something even more astounding. And it seems like in the eastern part of the United States that there are these stone walls that appear every now and then as almost as a way of saying, look, we are right at the boundary of something pretty incredible, and it's better you rethink your next couple steps.
Well, I'll tell you what, when getting back to the night with Danny and I, as we were leaving, Danny says to me, he says, hey, Al, do me a favor, take me down to part of the Appalachian Trail where you had those coyotes that were being hunted. I believe that they were being hunted by Sasquatches. And because we had I had a coyote the size of a German Shepherd run across my feet. He's scared out of its mind. They were yipping in every different direction. And we all felt that we were being shadowed the night we were there. And nobody even knew that the coyotes were there at the time. They were very quiet until they took off running in every direction, which wouldn't make any sense for pack of coyotes. They're the ones usually doing the chasing. So anyway, I bring Danny into this part of the Appalachian Trail to show him where it took place. And as we're in there, we start seeing structures off the trail. So we go off the trail and we're taking photographs and this, that, and the other thing. And after a few minutes of looking at these structures, we come back out onto the trail. Now we turn to head out off the trail onto the mining road. And just as we do that, I see Danny buckle, his knees buckle, his head goes back, his shoulders go back, and it looks like he just got shot with a high-powered rifle from a clock tower or something. And I bend down to catch him because I think he's going down. There's no doubt in my mind. I go to catch him, but he catches himself. And I says, what happened to him? And I turn him around, and he's white as a ghost, and he's a little frazzled. And I said, what happened? And he says, that white light or blue flash that Bryan was talking about? And I go, yeah. And he says, I just got hit with it. I felt some kind of energy go through his fingertips of his left hand, go through his body and out his right hand. And when this happened, he closed his eyes and he seen a white flash and a blue light. And he was a little, shaken by it. So I said, well, let's just sit down here for a few minutes and catch your bearings. Because, we were still like a mile and a half in, and I didn't want to have to carry him out. And he says, what the hell happened? And I says, honestly, I think you just got hit with some infrasound. I said, now tomorrow when you wake up and you go to the bathroom, check for your, blood in your urine, because if there's blood there, then you really should go to the hospital and get yourself checked out. I said, but I don't know if that infrasound was meant for me or for him, and he just happened to turn in front of me and he got hit with it. But I've been there many, many times. I used to go there when my kids were small, and my German Shepherd, we used to go hiking up the trails, and I never had any problem with anything. And all of the experiences that I've had there over the years in investigating, I've never got hit with anything. Yes, we've come out of there loopy. I don't know if it's just the energy of the lake or what, but it does when you're at that lake for any amount of time, extended amount of time, like 8 hours or something like that, like we put in when we go there. Because whenever we go, we always go and do a day-night investigation. We try to get as much out of it as we can.
Yep.
And when you come out of it after 8 hours, you're loopy. There's something about that energy in that place. And I'll tell you, I went there with Danny. I took a Geiger counter reading at the mouth of the lake when we first went in, and the radiation was very, very low. But when I went back, and the sacred site is high and away from the lake, you wouldn't really think there would be much radiation up there. When I went back later this year and I checked it, I did another Geiger counter reading at the mouth of the lake. It was very, very low. And when I went up to the sacred site, it was very, very high. And I called the psychic, and she said that's because the energy was amping up to create a vortex, because something was coming in that night. And that was the night I wanted to go, like on Friday the 13th. But we actually went on the 14th. But that was the first time that I've ever gotten high radiation readings up at the sacred site. Never before. So
yeah, I mean,
I don't know if something.
I didn't mean to interject, but we did get, when we went up there at one point to go back up to the lake, I did some readings, and at the beginning of the lake, when you first get off the road to get at the lake, I mean, we got some readings there. It was the equivalent of being your atypical radiation, but for about 7 years worth at one point.
Well, that was the day.
A lot.
That was the day the wind was blowing towards us.
Right.
And the radiation. But then when we went to the north side of the lake, but wasn't that the same day that every time we took the Geiger counter reading, the wind was blowing in our direction?
Yes. And also,
we went to all four sides of the lake, and every time we took the Geiger counter reading, the wind was always blowing in our face. Go figure that out.
Yeah, but going back to the same road where Danny just had that experience, we went down that part of the Appalachian Trail, we would get these readings, Ron, that it would just appear, and it would be there, and you would move it would move a little bit left or right, and then you turn around and you go back, and then it was gone. They were appearing and stopping. It was almost as if something was there. Now, I don't know what it is. Is it the ability of these creatures, the Sasquatch, to actually cloak themselves and they give off a radiation reading, or was there something else going on there? Maybe another entity or being from portals or different dimensions. I can't tell you because we haven't, we have no evidence to base it on. But it was very strange.
Wow. I would truly like to get up there sometime because this really is in my wheelhouse. I would
love to take you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what, if it's close enough, why don't we plan something maybe in June let's do an investigation and throw it up on YouTube and see what happens.
Sure.
Oh, absolutely. We should do it in May. Because in June it starts to get buggy and the mosquitoes come out. So if we get there before everything, the heat wave breaks, you know what I mean? We won't be eaten alive.
That's right. And I think this will be very interesting to our listeners and our viewers on the YouTube site as well, too, that a lot of these investigations, people are going almost as armchair quarterbacks. They don't get a chance to get out. A lot of our listeners are in other countries. And this is a way to really see the landscape, and they can interact vicariously through us. Since I've been listening to you guys talk about this, I've been completely, enamored by this site, and I really want to go out there and take a look and at some of these structures and see if I could make any kind of sense to it. This might be one of those places where nothing makes sense, and there are places around the world just like this, where things don't make any rational sense, and I'm willing to, give this the good old college try.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those it's one of those places that don't make sense. It's Nuclear Lake, New Jersey, and then a couple other places that it just doesn't. I can't explain it. You just have to experience it. That's the best way I would say, right, Al? I mean, it's kind of and it's a beautiful place. And then there's a bunch of people that are able to. I think they go swimming in the lake. I would never go swimming in this lake.
I would never go swimming in the lake.
I mean, when we went there for that Halloween investigation in 2015, and we had the whoops from the Sasquatch, and we had the bluff charge and the rock thrown at me, and I mean, I was looking around thinking, where am I going to go here, because it's pitch black, you cannot see, and do I really want to go in that water? So, I mean, it's one of those things where, it's a crazy, crazy place. You're going to come out of that, I don't know, a better person, but you're really going to start questioning a lot of things that go on in your life.
Yeah, I'll tell you the truth, Ron. The night I was there with Danny, the energy in that place was so calming that I could have put down a sleeping bag and slept underneath that archway and slept like a baby that night. That's the kind of energy I felt. I really did not feel anything, negative or dangerous. It just felt so peaceful and so relaxing. And, I'm not really an outdoorsy kind of guy. I mean, I do a lot of investigations outside, but I don't spend, nights out, weeks at a time in a tent, or in a sleeping bag outside of a tent. But that night, I really could have just slept underneath that archway, and because I'd put that's where I actually set up my chair underneath that archway, and that's where the creature was coming in behind me, and that's what was freaking Danny out, I think, so much because it was getting closer and closer to me, and I wasn't doing anything about it, and because it's just the energy was just so calming. It was just an amazing energy,
Wow. Inviting, wanting you to stay there, or maybe luring you to stay there as if something was going to prey upon you?
I don't know. I mean,
that's one of those things.
I usually get gut feelings on stuff. Yep. You know what I mean? I'm not psychic by any stretch of the imagination. Believe me, I don't claim to be, but I get gut feelings. I get gut feelings on everything. And I never, 99.9% of the times I always listen to them. And that night, the energy was just so relaxing in that place. I really didn't really feel threatened by anything. If anything, I felt the opposite way. I felt like I was being protected. Like I had guardians around me,
You know what? We have a couple people in the area there. Al and I went up to see Gail and Deb from the Hudson Valley Bigfoot group, and they were presenting. We met a couple people from the area, and there's a gentleman and his daughter that was there that claimed to have a Sasquatch that they're pretty much feeding.
Habituating. Yep.
Yeah,
they're habituating a family of Sasquatches,
which is not a good idea. It's not like a stray cat. This thing is a monster. This is 800 pounds of fun, and it will rip your arm off. I mean, if just think about it this way: if Bubbles the chimp that Michael Jackson had could rip your arm out of your body, just off your body at will, what can an 800-pound, 8-foot monster do? I mean, at will. And so you just don't want to do that. That area has Bigfoot sightings. It has dogman sightings. It's an incredible place, but you've got to, and it can't be peaceful. Like Al said, there was a couple of moments after we had it was very tense, that it just became very peaceful after a while. It was like everything's going to be all right. But you got to go in there with a little trepidation before. You can't go in guns blazing. I mean, everybody I know that's ever done that, they're the ones that are targeted, not Al. They know him already. I think they. And
the funny thing about that night, Ron, is I invited like 16 people to come out with us, and one by one, everybody was dropping off. So at this point, I'm the only guy going in, and Cindy, our psychic. You've interviewed Cindy.
Yes, we have.
And so Bryan says, Al, I don't think you should go in. And I'm like, Bryan, I'm going in. I'm being drawn into. I'm being called in. I'm being pulled in. I'm going in. He's like, I don't know. You shouldn't go in by yourself. And I said, I don't care. I'm going in. Come hell or high water, I'm going in. And he's like, well, I go, look at it. He goes, well, look at it this way. Everybody canceled on you. He said, maybe that's an omen. You shouldn't go. And I said, well, look at it my way. I was like, maybe this experience is just meant for me, and that's why everybody canceled,
right.
So, Bryan's always the pessimist, and I'm always the positive.
No, I don't know if I'm the pessimist. I just look at the rationale of it, and when you start, it's funny because when we're going to go to Nuclear Lake, usually about 2 or 3 days or a week before we do that, each one of us will start having very strange dreams. When we sleep, we'll just wake up. They'll be very bizarre, weird. I don't know if they know we're coming, or there's and they're giving us signals or signs. I actually had a couple experiences where I was there, and I literally, in one of them, I got taken by a Sasquatch. And I'm a pretty big boy, so So that kind of freaked me out. And all I heard was, as I was traveling through the woods in this dream, was Al screaming, "We got to find Bryan!" And no one was looking for me at this point. Al's the only one. But the thing is, yes, sometimes I become a mother hen or whatever you want to call it, because I am concerned and I look out. This is how this is why Al and I work out well with each other. We do look after each other, but we're also stubborn. So I think we're going to change the name from BPS instead of Society to the Bronxville Stubborns, because if Al's going to go, he's going to go. If I'm going to do something, I'm going to do something. But maybe you're right. Maybe it was a destiny thing.
Yeah, but the funny thing about it, everything that happened that night, Danny was the 11th hour on. He called me at the last minute, said, "Can I come?" And I said, "Absolutely." But everything that happened, he was the one who experienced it all. So, that just kind of threw a monkey wrench into my thoughts. If it was all for me, and then why didn't I experience anything? Why did Danny be the one who experienced it all? I don't know. Thinking
about that, and if we go back to that, Danny's an interesting guy. He knows a lot about a lot of different things. He's been around a lot of different places. He's a fairly tough individual. He's not going to take crap from anybody, but he's open to a lot more things. He's a really I would say, more balanced person than most people are. So I was thinking of this as maybe Al was supposed to be there as almost like a guide. Like, no, it's okay, relax. Like when you're going through a situation, it's someone that brings you back down and roots you and grounds you. And I think that was his role, because they know Al's not going to get nervous or upset with this. But the new person, because he was open to it, and he got a little freaked out by it. Al I think your role was to be the master. You are the master, and you're getting your sensei, Danny, to no, this is how you slowly get into it, Danny. Don't freak out. Don't run. And one thing we'll tell you, anybody investigating cryptids in this world, is you don't run.
Don't run.
Do not turn your back on anything in the woods.
No. Because you go from being herded out to being hunted in a matter of seconds. Thousandth of a second. The
split second you turn to run,
you're prey.
You're done.
You become prey. Yeah.
Right. So
I agree.
If you want to give yourself an extra maybe 15-minute head start, bring people that will run as a distraction in the woods.
No, every time we go out, I always like to invite people who are not part of the team to validate anything we find. And I always give everybody a long, drawn out, these are the do's and you don'ts when we're out there, And I never let anybody come with us who's got any firearms, because I just don't trust anybody with a gun other than myself. And I don't even carry one. We go in with survival knives, machetes, and pepper spray, stuff like that, just to protect us from the other animals that are out there, like the coyotes and the mountain lions and the bears. But, I always tell everybody, if something comes, no matter what it is, put some steel between you and it.
Yep.
Put a tree between you and it, a rock between you and it. But don't ever turn your back and run from it, because you can't outrun these creatures. You can't outrun anything on four legs. So why even try?
Yeah, there's no way. And we've been fairly successful. I'm knocking on wood right now with that kind of mentality and philosophy. It's just, you definitely got to come out, Ron. We got to get him out there. Maybe we can get Ken Gearhart to come with you. Because
I'm excited.
I think Gearhart would have Gearhart has experienced all these things, but he hasn't really seen. I think you recalled him saying that. So we should get people to experience this, and maybe when the cryptid guru comes out, they'll be like, "Oh my God, that's Ron Murphy, the cryptid guru." We got to make ourselves known.
You mean the Bigfoot? Yeah, right. They'll come up because on my name alone. Yeah, that's probably going to happen.
Well, Bryan mentioned the Bigfoot researchers of the Hudson Valley, Gail and Deb. They're very good friends with Les Strom, and Les comes out up here all the time and goes out with them, but they don't do any, because there are two women. They don't do any night investigations. They just do day investigations. I'd love to be able to get him while he's here with them to come out and do a day night with us as well.
Oh, 100%.
You know what I mean? So That would be
let's make
great.
it happen. Yeah, I think this would be great viewing because, again, a lot of people just don't like to go out into the woods and get dirty, and a lot of people aren't able to get out there into the woods. And I would gladly like to open this up to anybody, the same way we open up our show to so many different types of thought patterns and what have you. I'd like to open it up and just let's see what people can experience for themselves.
But I will say this. It starts off as a nice wide mining road, but it turns into a goat trail at certain points. The Appalachian Trail at certain points is no joke. So you really have to be, you have to be physically fit to be able to do it because it is dangerous, especially at night. It's a lot of rocky terrain, a lot of pointy rocks. If you don't have the right gear, you could go down and be in a lot of trouble. So, you don't want to go down on the Appalachian Trail.
It's going to be a nightmare to get help. You're going to, you may have to be left there. These woods are pretty intense and scary. And if you have to leave somebody there, that's the last thing you want to, worry about. But we're working on about a minute left.
Oh, wow. That was quick.
Yeah,
one quick, yeah.
That's the whole thing. It's a Bigfoot thing.
Once you go down the rabbit hole of Inside the Goblin Universe, time really doesn't exist anymore.
No, there's no time and space down the rabbit hole.
Not at all.
But this is one rabbit hole I will guarantee our listeners that within the next several months, definitely within the warmer parts of 2018, we will definitely be on that scene, and we'll have Elle back on, and we will we'll try to figure this out, and if we can't figure it out, we'll at least try to bring back some evidence.
Yes.
Oh, absolutely. And we found footprints there, but one time it was the ball of the foot, but it was underwater. Okay, because the lake was low. Another time it was the heel of the foot. So we were ever able to get. I'm looking for that perfect cast, and we've never been able to get it as of yet. But I haven't stopped looking.
Yes, we went. We recently Al had another exciting, and I wish we had more time to actually go into it. But we went out. He called me on a Thursday. I said, you got to go back. He's like, I can't go back. It's like there's no place to pull over. So we said Friday morning. We went out Friday morning, and he had the casting material. I was itching. He was itching. I was praying we'd get a cast. We did find a couple of impressions that looked like and big prints. We found huge bedding areas, but not that elusive cast. We did go once with to a specific area where Deb and Gail do go, and we found, how big was that footprint, Al?
Well, yeah, I was being drawn to this cliff, this ledge. I don't know why, and everybody was going in the opposite direction, and they're like, Al, you're going the wrong way. I'm like, no, I'm going. This is where I got to go. Yep. And I looked over the edge, and there was this perfect cast where something had jumped over the edge, landed on one foot, and must have jumped down into the ravine. And Deb actually went back and cast it, and it turned out to be 19 inches long. So it was really a big cast.
It was a big boy. And
yeah, it was a big boy.
Yeah, the problem is we would have casted it, but, there was some major lightning hitting in the area. It was one of those places where you don't want to be in a thunderstorm, especially with that kind of lightning. So it's like, do we cast it and die, or do we go back to the car and live?
Yeah, there was a lot of running water.
Yeah,
if you remember. Yeah.
Yeah. So we would have been, fried at that point. But
I want to thank you guys for having me on. This was great. It was like just hanging out with a bunch of friends and just talking.
That's how we roll out
about the stuff that I love. I'm a cryptid guy. I had my first skunk ape sighting at 12 years old down in South Florida, and that's a story all in itself. So ever since then, I've been hooked. So
yeah.
We were glad to have you on. This was great. The scope of the investigations that you do really make for good radio, and I'm glad that we had you on, and you're definitely going to be a guest in the near future as well.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, we really didn't get into all the technical stuff. We take so much equipment out with us, and I'm old school, new school kind of guy. I like to bring the old school stuff with us as well, because sometimes the high tech stuff just doesn't work right. And I've always gotten a lot of success with both. If one doesn't work, the other one does. So
yeah,
I know teams up here that are paranormal teams where I live that are only high tech, and if they're not getting anything on those meters, they're sitting around doing nothing. Where I'm breaking out a compass, I'm breaking out a crystal pendulum, dowsing rods, the old
crystal
flashlight
skulls?
test.
The
I'm doing crystal skulls,
Crystal
with Tibetan
skulls?
singing bowls. I'm doing stuff, to try to get something done. Try to get some proof.
I'll tell you,
I'm not just sitting around waiting for a meter to go off.
just so you know, it was the nuclear lake investigation we did that changed our total philosophy on how we're supposed to go out and to investigate. And from that point forward, because we were having issues, from that point forward, every time we go out, we have one of us has to have a live recorder going 24/7 because
Yes.
we don't want to lose anything, and that's how it's very frustrating when it looks like you're recording, but it doesn't work. So yeah, it changes
And that
our
happens
policies.
a lot in the paranormal field. Recorders are going, but then when you go to play it back, there's nothing there. I don't know how that happens, but it happens all the time.
It's an incredible experience. But we're almost out of time, Mr. Murphy.
I know. We're going to have to bid everybody adieu. So, again, Al, hey, thank you very much for coming on. I cannot wait till our listeners hear this. You spin a great tell whenever you talk, and this was great. Yeah, thanks a lot for coming on. But, all right, so we will say goodnight to these goblins for another edition of Inside the Goblin Universe. My name is Ronald Murphy.
I'm Bryan Bowden.
And we'll see you again next week inside the Goblin Universe. Good night, guys.
Good night.
Dive into the ancient mythologies found around the world and tread through nearly forgotten legends as the crypto guru Ronald Murphy sets sail on his quest for mermaids. Travel through history and wade through the vast expanses of time and space as the author seeks to uncover why these beguiling creatures are so pervasive in human culture. On Mermaids, an exploration of mermaid folklore from ancient origins to modern culture is now available at Amazon.com. And be sure to attend the lecture that accompanies this book at the Cryptozoological Conference hosted by Lauren Coleman in Portland, Maine, summer 2018.